And so they had to give another dose, and it's like, you've got to be kidding me. But
boys doing okay?
At least, the boys are, one of them, Jackson, is our dog whisperer, and just loves Summer, loves both of the dogs, like unbelievable. And he took it hard. He was emotional when I got home Friday or Monday when we were going to take her. My sister-in-law was there, and she didn't really help matters. And so, and then we got home, and he was really distraught. And then even after he'd gone to bed, a half hour later, he comes into our room. He's knocking at the door, crying, just sobbing. So he's taking it rough. The other two are sad, but fairly oblivious. But Jackson, no, he's the sensitive one, and so. But we've got Nash, and hopefully that'll keep them occupied.
You took the boys too, Mike?
No, we didn't. We thought about it, and I don't think they were going to let them in the room. And we let them say their goodbyes before we took off. So figure that was best. If they were a little older, probably would have brought them.
Yeah, I had to put 3 dogs down, different times.
Sure.
But I took my daughter each time, and we had them cremated. So I took my daughter to the cremation too. And the cremation people and the vets all told me that they wished more people would bring their kids, because
sure,
it was a way for kids to learn about the cycle of life, as well as be able to say their goodbyes in a real meaningful way. It was healing for my daughter each time.
Yeah.
I would absolutely agree with that, because I took my son, and he was only, maybe 6, 7 years old. And he got that closure. I mean, just like you, Mike, Jake had grown up with my dog, and from a baby, that's what he knew. And so it was good for him to see that. And I think that did allow him to heal a little faster, because he did have that closure. He wasn't wondering where the dog was. It was,
Sure.
I actually really appreciate that. And I know that when he is older, he's probably going to have his own dog. So he's going to have to deal with something like that, make the decisions, that kind of thing. But he'll have a better idea of how to deal with it.
Yeah, I thought about bringing the boys, but with the restrictions, I mean, they don't even let their families into the waiting rooms or anything. And I thought trying to get 5 people into a room might be pushing it along with them. My first experience with this, I was 16 and I had to put down my family's Golden. My mom and brother took off on vacation, and I was probably working at the time, so I couldn't go, or I had to go late or something. And of course, I was the one that had to put down our first dog, and 16 years old. Talk about rough.
By yourself, for sure.
Yes,
for sure.
Yeah. But like I said, she's in a better place, and she's not suffering.
Yeah.
Was that pun intentional?
What's that?
The pun you made, was that intentional? You're like, oh, I had to put down a dog that was rough.
No. No, I'm a little slow this morning.
I enjoyed it. It brings a little levity to the subject.
Thanks, Bob. I can always count on you, You're good for...
It created a smile. That's all that matters.
Yes, exactly.
I'm not good for a lot of things, but my locker room presence is top notch.
Anybody have some happy dollars?
Yeah, I do. I will jump in. I am happy. Good morning, everybody. David List, Northwestern Medicine. I'm happy because I finally have, I'm looking at over my computers in my home office in my basement, finally took down an old bed that we weren't using down here, and just some space that was kind of wasted down in the basement that we converted into a home gym that I've been wanting to have for years, and just couldn't justify spending the money on it. And with COVID being what it was for the past year and realizing I was getting rounder and rounder and needed to get moving again, decided, you know what, now's the time to spend a little bit of that savings and let's set up this gym we've been putting off. And so got a squat rack and weight set and benches set up and everything. So been using that the past couple of weeks, and it's a fun soreness to have back again. I really enjoy lifting weights, and it's just, I don't know, I like it. It puts me in a great mood. It gets my day started well, and I feel very productive and glad to be working on my health again. So
Good for you.
You know what is so crazy is that I actually was just talking to a friend of mine. I'm like, working out, whether it's lifting weights or just walking on the treadmill, whatever it is, can be so therapeutic. I hear from so many people that it is their therapy. I mean, I was a personal trainer once upon a day, and it's like, it is so therapeutic and cathartic. People don't often recognize that, but it gets your endorphins going, and it can make the snowy, crummy COVID days feel a heck of a lot better.
Yeah, I'm not a morning person at all, and most of you probably know that by now. Like I have a hard time with getting going and having energy in the mornings. But that's when I start my day with a workout, like I'm forced to. I have to get going, and it gets me mentally and physically moving, and just it sets off the day in the right tone for me, and I'm much more productive every day that I have a workout versus the days that I'm off and don't. I'm more productive, and I enjoy that. And now with the home gym, I actually have the reverse problem where I do a morning workout and then I go through and get a lot done during the day. And then it's, 4 p.m. and I'm going, yeah, I could lift a little bit more. I do a little bit more. I have to temper myself and slow down so that I don't hurt myself.
Well, I have a weird
Anybody
happy dollar.
Go for it.
It's very weird. Scott slipped and fell in the garage and broke his hip.
Oh, no.
Oh,
Had to have a complete hip replacement because he broke the ball of the joint. But
Oh
the
my
good,
God.
the fun part of it is that he's getting what he needs in the hospital. They're taking really good care of him. He thinks the entire staff is wonderful. So he's having a fantastic experience, which means that maybe next time he has to go, and there will be a next time, he will be not so resistant to it. So he's getting a lot of help that he's needed for a long time. So I'm very, very happy about that. So bad news on the broken hip, but they do the procedure and you're up and walking in a day. So as soon as he can do stairs on his own, then he can come home. It should be, a week or so.
Isn't that crazy how quickly they get you up? My mom had a knee replacement last year, and she was up like within hours. They wanted her walking, with the circulation and everything.
I
remember decades ago, they had you sit there and lay there and do nothing. And now it's so fast.
The vast
they do it
majority
for a lot of reasons. They do it so that you don't get pneumonia, and they do it so you don't develop blood clots. It's very good therapy to get up and get moving.
Yeah,
His problem is if he can walk down the hall, he'll think he can come home today, and that's not happening because I'm not even there. I'm in Peoria. And the other good happy dollar is I'm not drifted in with 4 feet of snow anymore. And it's cold, but it's not windy anymore. So that's all exciting.
that's a good thing. Speaking of hips, how are you doing, Scott?
Good. Feeling
Recover
good.
well?
Yeah.
Good.
Back to work. So it's doing good. Thanks for asking. Hey,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna reach out to Dave with kudos. My mother-in-law about 5 weeks ago now had a stroke, and we took her up to Nimsey and then had to take her down to Central DuPage and Marion Joy, and she's home now. But Northwestern, the folks through the Northwestern system there at Nimsey and Central DuPage were just phenomenal. So Dave, kudos out to your group over there. Did a wonderful job.
Awesome. Yeah, it's a really great system, and I'm glad the acquisition happened for our community. It has improved quality in a number of different ways. Some behind the scenes that most people would never know about, and others that you see firsthand like that. And not that things weren't well before. NIMC was a great hospital. Centegra was a great system. That before the change is over, but it adds a layer that's there that's really good. So glad things went well for.
Scott, I wanted to tell you, I meant to tell you last time I saw you, we sorely missed you at Secret Santa this past year. Wasn't the same not having you there, but we know you were on your road to recovery and glad you are doing much better.
Yeah, looking forward to this year. Miss doing it. Glad it was
good.
such a great success again this year. How you guys worked it out in the midst of COVID is just phenomenal. So
it went well. I'm very pleased. Did not think it would turn out the way it was, and I was nervous through the event, and even on Saturday I was so afraid that we weren't going to be done in time and we were going to have all these leftover gifts. I was getting ready to push to just put toys in bags, just bag them. And Carrie, no, we can do this. I'm like, easy for you to say. You'll skate out of here at 4:00 when we're supposed to be done, and I'll be stuck with a few members trying to figure out how to wrap another 100 families. And sure enough, about 4:30, we wrapped it up. So
very cool.
It was good. Anybody else happier? If not, we can move on. Some upcoming dates we have. Tomorrow morning, 7:30, we've got our board meeting. I will send out agendas later today. Our visioning is next Monday and Thursday, the 22nd and the 25th at 6 p.m. Yesterday, I sent out an email with some forms. There's one form labeled SurveyMonkey Design needs to be turned in to me by Friday, 9 a.m. if we can, so I can get that back to Mike and his team. Then there are several others. There's another one called 3A writing exercise. I think they'd like that filled out just to get you thinking. And then there are some additional reading handouts. I think there's like 3 additional files, just some Rotary info that may help you understand and move forward. So we can get that. Also, I sent out, I believe, the link to sign up. At least I thought I did. Did I send that out, David? Or is it a link from Mike that you have to sign up and then they'll send you the actual Zoom link?
I'm actually looking through my email right now because I have a million of emails that I'm behind on.
If not,
I didn't see it.
Okay, I'll probably send that again. I may have not sent that one out. He sent that later in the day yesterday. So basically, the email is just, you have to sign up and then they will send you the personal link for Monday and Thursday's meeting. So I'll send that out today. Next Tuesday, the 24th, 5:30 p.m., we've got our Oktoberfest meeting at Paradise Financial Partners. February 27th is the Rotary District 6440 virtual trivia team challenge. It's being hosted by the Wheaton Club and Sean Nelson. Really would like to see if we could put together a club. I emailed a few of the people that were participated the last couple of years, hoping to get a team of 10 together. I think it'd be great. I don't know if you got that email too, David and Jerry.
I saw that one come through, and what I couldn't find, even with looking through the email that you had gotten and the flyer that was attached, and then going to the Wheaton Club's website where they have a registration online, still I can't find anything on there. Is that virtual or is that in person?
It is virtual.
Okay.
Yeah, let me see it. I've got.
They didn't specify anywhere on it being in person or virtual. Like there's nothing about like where it is or anything like that. So I was confused about that.
Yeah.
There
let me,
isn't. I was confused too, and I'm a little confused about how we're
It's
gonna
actually,
give it
it's
among
actually on the
ourselves.
flyer.
Okay. But
Let me
how do we get to
share
kibitz
this real
between
quick.
ourselves without letting everybody else in the world know our answer?
I
So
don't know if they're going to do breakout rooms. I'm not really.
I was going to say Zoom has a feature called breakout rooms that we never utilize for our club, mainly because we don't have enough people where we need to. But I've seen I was a guest at another club that they regularly have about 30 members that attend their meeting, and so as part of their meeting, their club meeting, they do breakout rooms for 10 minutes where they'll then have groups of 5 people that they'll have, and it just allows some smaller conversations and talking. So that's kind of what I think might work, but we'll see what they have in store.
Yeah, I would guess that's it.
A virtual.
I'll reach out.
evening.
I will
Oh,
reach out to
yeah.
Sean and see, but I'm sure that's probably what they'll do. I think it'd be great if we can put that together. I had mentioned to him that we, some of our members were part of a crew a couple of years ago that ran and won two years in a row. So I think he was a little scared that maybe we'd send some ringers in. Let's see.
But we're rusty.
So that,
It's been a while.
yeah. It'd be good.
Speak for
March
yourself,
11th.
David.
March 11th and 13th is pets. Matt, are you signed up for that?
I'm signed up for the orientation. I haven't signed up for the actual event yet.
It should be interesting to see how that goes this year. I've been to pets twice, and it'll be interesting to see how they can pull that off. It's a part of the experience is the camaraderie with other Rotarians and incoming presidents, and that was a lot of fun. The hospitality suites at night were certainly fun on Friday and Saturday night to be able to attend. So I'm curious to see what they can do to engage members. So
I think it'll also be interesting too because the pets actually expanded. And this was in the works, but before COVID happened, that before pets was Midwest Pets, I think it was, where like we had districts from neighboring districts. I think there were 6 or 7 of them in Wisconsin, the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, I think Iowa. So like basically around, we were the central area. So thankfully for us, we got to host most of the time. That it would be near us, but had a whole bunch of other districts that came in. It was pretty cool to meet some other Rotarians from outside of our district and be part of that.
Sure.
It expanded even further than that, and now it's called Mega Pets. And there's, I think,
Really?
another like 10 districts that are added in addition to the 7 we already had that are part of this program. And so it's all being organized virtually now. I actually will be leading some sessions. I mean, I'll be leading sessions. I'm so excited. Some breakout sessions about working with leadership is my topic that I have to discuss. So I have 2 breakout sessions that I have to lead, and it'll be interesting and cool to see. And I really, really enjoyed pets, if you can't tell. So that's why I did volunteer. That said, hey, I would love to be a part of hopefully making that productive for other Rotarians.
Cool. March 31st, 6 p.m. social at Half Times in lovely downtown Johnsburg Financial District. We're meeting at 6, so that'd be good. Announcements and discussions again. Club visioning next week, 22nd and 25th. Make sure you get that form back into me, Survey Monkey Design. Fill out the other form and then just read through the other 3 materials that are sent out. I was going to ask, anybody attend the BB&B committee meeting last night? No. I didn't want to screen share. I was hoping that Don or Dennis would be here. So I've gone through a little bit, and I sent Don last night an updated sponsorship sheet, and I changed our top sponsorship to 10,000. It was at 7,500. I thought, let's go for broke. Basically, this is kind of what it'll give out. I think the one thing that some feedback I got back from Don last night is to add, and I'm thinking at the Ruby level 2,500 to offer band sponsorships. If I remember correctly, I think Adams Auto Body normally likes to sponsor the John Todd band. So I think he was going to check his records from last year to see what level those sponsorships for last year. So maybe at $2,500 level, maybe we will add one of the perks is being a band sponsor. First come, first serve based on the band. So that's about it with that. Once I get that info from him, I'll probably just send this out to the club, have everybody review it and see what they think. But I think it incorporates most of what Cynthia had created in her initial version, other than I think we've gone from 4 different levels to 8 or 9 levels here. So, but I think this is pretty good. Yeah, let's see. Foundation bylaws. We are meeting tomorrow at noon, David.
Me and you might be meeting. You and I are you are the only one that responded to me with an okay that time worked. I got one other reply that for one person that could not make that time and said that, feel free to meet if it works. I'll take a look at the minutes and and update me. I'll email my thoughts, but nobody else responded yes or no. So I kind of wanted to ask you and anybody else that's here, that I know there's a couple people here that are part of that committee, either responses, or should we reschedule that so that we can get more confirmations? What do you think?
Jerry, are you available tomorrow?
Yeah, at noon. Yeah, I'm good.
Do you want to email the group and see if you can get a response today, or do we just go ahead and reschedule?
Sure. I'll send another email and just say that, I did get a couple yeses, but a bunch of no replies. So please, we are going to meet tomorrow, and let's meet at noon and let's at least have some discussion with who can make it. And for those that can't,
I'm good with that.
I'll make sure, help me remember, please, but I'll make myself a note to record that and maybe send out the recording and say, hey, if you didn't make it, here's the recording of our discussion.
And sorry, David, I missed it. What was that meeting for?
That's the bylaws committee.
Perfect. Thanks.
Are you able to make that, Matt, tomorrow at noon?
Yeah, that should be fine.
Cool. Okay. Well, that's 4 of us at least.
Okay. That's it. So what I'm going to do is we had the Elgin Breakfast Club had a series of COVID-related talks the last couple of weeks, and I think they've got their 3rd in the series coming this coming Monday. This first one was the science of vaccines, so I thought I would share that with the group. Let's see if we can. Try that again.
Good afternoon. In surgical oncology.
Can you guys hear this?
Joining Anita, Dr. Marcus was president and CEO of St. Vincent's Health Services in Bridgeport, Connecticut, which is part of Ascension Health. In addition to his medical degree from Duke, Dr. Marcus, a good colleague of ours, received an MBA from the University of Massachusetts at Amherst. Dr. Marcus, thank you for being such a good colleague at Anita, and thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Father. Give me a second to load up the screen. And I hope you can see that. So it's my pleasure to be here. I really want to thank Rotary District 6440 for inviting me to kick off this series of informative lectures to this audience. I think I've heard some of the other speakers, but there's a lot of excellent knowledge that we can trust. So today we want to focus on the science of vaccines. However, to set the context, related illness and what our experience has been at Avita Health. We actually have one of the richest. It's now well over a year since we saw our first. This Rotary district is based up in our northwest suburbs around Barrington. We have a hospital there. Many of you are familiar with St. Lucie. And the story does center around St. Lucie. So it was Saturday, the city on the left. I received an email from the chief medical officer at St. Joseph's on the Lake in Chicago. A very simple email said their infection control team got together and they suggested that I share an alert that came out from the CDC. So I looked at the alert. There was a way it came out the day before. It talks about update long-term guidance on novel virus coming out of Wuhan, China, and suggested that we screen travelers to the region. So I didn't think a lot of it. For Chicago, I actually came from New York City, where I expected this virus maybe and no, it did land in Seattle for the first case. I never expected to come to Chicago.
Hey, Mike, the video is pretty difficult to hear. I don't know if you need to mute yourself to so that your mic doesn't override it, or.
Saying, Dr. Rao and his infection control team suggested we do this. Please share it with your agency staff. That was on January 18th, 2020. About 4 days later, there we were in the news. So she was placed into isolation, appropriately treated. And back then, we didn't have a motion tests in about in a matter of 24 hours. She was actually down 20 later. Yeah, send the test to the CDC, but they confirmed the positive. And a few days later, a week later, we had the second patient actually isolation. You can see here that at that time, on January 30th, just over a year ago, there were 6 cases in the country that were confirmed. One in Washington State, which is the index case, two in California, one in Arizona, 2 in Avita Health. So what's very interesting about this second case, that this was a confirmed case, person transfer. It's unclear at the time. It seems ridiculous now, but it's unclear at the time of this virus could be transferred person to person. And we turned out this is one this case of person transfer actually written up by our colleagues at public health function manager, which is a very highly ranked term. And again, there's no person transmission, severe acute respiratory syndrome. Like this, not happening right here. I think this article, which appeared in Chicago Tribune, really summarizes. She was known as Patient 1. Chicago woman in her 60s who traveled to Christmas Day in China where she cared for her elderly father. Seriously was diagnosed with respiratory sickness. After returning to Chicago in January, Rose symptoms of fever, cough, fatigue, nausea. See this? She was hospitalized for pneumonia. She became the first person or a first patient. Second patient to test positive. You will understand this. Soon physicians and our providers as to where we are with our numbers on the pandemic. After those 2 early cases, we had a lull in February, and so we stood down our command center. However, on March 2nd, our 3rd patient, a school teacher, presented to the emergency room at Resurrection University, and we stood up our command center. Today is day 344 of continuous command center operations at Amita Health. We are still acting under the emergency orders of the governor as far as our response to the pandemic, as many healthcare systems in the area are. So as you look at this dashboard, just to give you an idea of the numbers, and this is just Amita Health. If you look across the top in the purple box on the left, this is the number of tests we've done. We've done over 190,000 COVID tests in the past year. As we move over to that orange box in the middle, we've diagnosed nearly 30,000 cases of COVID positive disease just through our system alone in Illinois. Now, many of those patients were treated at home. The vast majority were treated at home. However, approximately 8,000 or so were hospitalized in our system. That would be a little higher than you might normally see in the press, and that's because many of our patients were tested through our emergency rooms, so there's a higher likelihood that they're sicker and needing hospital admission. You can see 2 boxes over that we have discharged safely over 7,000 patients with COVID-related disease back into the community. We know now that sometimes those patients have long-lasting effects, and we continue to take care of them in the ambulatory setting. Unfortunately, moving 1 box to the left to that peach-colored box, we've also seen 1,123 lives lost in our hospitals. That's probably an underestimate because there have been lives lost after people leave our hospitals or perhaps were transferred elsewhere or to hospice, but you can clearly see the devastating impact of this disease just at Amita Health. In our system, if you end up hospitalized with COVID, there's over a 10% chance that you're not going to survive that hospitalization. Of course, we know that very few patients die of this disease, but if you do end up in the hospital, that risk increases substantially because those are the sickest patients by far. Today, the box on the right, we have 184 patients today with COVID disease at Amita Health in our hospitals. I want to draw your attention to that larger graph in the middle with the blue and orange lines. This is our daily census of COVID patients since the beginning, since going back to March. You can see the 2 peaks in the blue curve, and the orange curve are persons under investigation. Those are people who we suspect have COVID. They've been tested and their tests have been sent off, but we don't know if they've been confirmed yet or not. The reason we track it this way is because the resources needed to take care of those patients are identical, whether you have COVID or you're just suspected of having COVID. So you can see the 2 peaks. Very swift uprise on the left, where we peaked at about 660 patients back at the beginning of May, and then it quickly came down to our baseline of less than 100 patients, which is that blue line that stretches across the summer. It was around October, early October, I think it was the 8th, we started noticing that the numbers in the state were going up. And you can see that our numbers quickly followed, where our numbers again peaked up in the 600 range, and we are still on the decline today with 184 patients as we're looking at the tail of that curve. It's unknown right now where that will flatten out. Hopefully it will go down, hopefully to 0 with the vaccine, but COVID has truly become part of our fabric, meaning that we have a steady flow of patients with COVID being admitted and being discharged daily from our hospitals, and that's about 14 patients a day. Many of you aren't familiar with Amita, and you should know that we have 14 acute care hospitals across Chicagoland. So what has happened to our staff over all this time? Well, certainly in the spring, and you can see those beautiful blue days and clouds, very different than today. But back in the spring, our staff really stepped up and they were widely recognized as heroes. And that was true all across the country. And these are a few of our hospitals and our staff who are truly despite all the challenges with PPE, challenges with testing, challenges with the emotional toil of these patients, these are all our staff who truly stepped up and took remarkable care of these patients. As our physicians, this is a team of physicians who are our ICU physicians, critical care, who would be fully dressed throughout the day, very different than what it would be like being in a hospital before COVID, where we'd be walking around with our lab coats and perhaps a tie on or not, or a jacket. But imagine being in these outfits throughout the day for many hours throughout the day. Really has a toll on people. It wasn't long before fatigue started to set in. What you see on the left and in the top middle, these are temporary rooms that we had to build in order to isolate these patients and put them into a negative pressure situation so we weren't spreading virus throughout the wards in the hospital. You can see what it looks like. It is not an uplifting picture. It is a picture that maybe looks like a prison or an old psychiatric ward. You can see the IV poles on the outside of the room. We put them out there with long tubing going to the patients so that the staff wouldn't necessarily have to go in the room, so we could limit their exposure to COVID. Our number one priority at the time was protecting our staff from COVID, because if our staff were infected on a large basis, that would, of course, impact our ability to care for our communities. On the right side, you can see a patient laying down. We learned that patients, it helped them to breathe better when they were lying on their stomachs. That's something called proning. And that was something that was commonly employed and saved many patients from going on a ventilator. And if you notice behind him, you see a black pipe that's kind of going out into the wall. That's how we converted these rooms to negative pressure. We literally put holes on the wall and vented the air to the outside. So you can see, how much our practice on a day-to-day basis really had to change. So the cumulative toll resulted not just at AMITA, but really across the country in provider burnout. With surges in COVID-19, we had to look at our own mental health of our providers and our physicians moving forward. The pandemic really exacerbated burnout throughout healthcare. We know that physicians and nurses and other providers have a history of burnout, but COVID-19 really brought it to the forefront. In general, the National Physician Burnout, Depression and Suicide Report from 2019 is that nearly half of physicians report burnout, additional 11% depression, and prolonged depression. And physicians and other healthcare providers do have a higher incidence of suicide. And we have seen that exacerbated by the pandemic. And what are the signs of burnout? It's finding less joy in our work, less energy and enthusiasm, depression, anxiety, feeling it's not fair to take time off, a lot of guilt. Many of our staff did not take time off for months and months, if not the entire year. Increased rumination and thinking about all of this, and of course, irritability and moodiness at work and at home. We had to put in place more support for our staff than we normally have. We do have a lot of expertise in behavioral health, and of course, our mission-based focus allows us to really offer a lot of support services to our staff. So we had widely available counseling and grief services for our staff, and you can see some examples of that here. This is a graph that just kind of shows the phases of a human response to a crisis, and I truly believe we saw a lot of this that I just described to you. The green circles where we are right now, the 1-year anniversary. So you can see the heroic efforts, right? The heroes are among us that happened early on, and then the disillusionment and the sinking feeling as the pandemic carried on. But now we're back on the upslope, and a big part of that is because of the vaccine, which is truly the light at the end of the tunnel. It's the reconstruction, the new beginning of getting back to a normally functioning society. So with that context, I'm going to now spend a few minutes
talking about the science of the COVID vaccine. What many of us feel is the light at the end of the tunnel. That's not the illusion, right? The tunnel is. And also what's often referred to as a shot of hope. I will be expanding on this on Friday, so I hope that you'll be able to join me for part 2 of this talk on Friday. So before we get to the vaccine itself, I think it's important to understand the anatomy of a virus. Being Rotarians, many of you probably know this, as your long history of working with the polio virus has put this front and center in your minds. But viruses are pretty simple. They're a strand of either RNA or DNA. In the coronavirus example, it's an RNA virus. And there's usually 4 or 5 proteins that RNA makes. And it makes a capsule to encapsulate the RNA. And it makes, in the coronavirus case that gives it its characteristic, it makes it its spike protein, or the corona that we see around the virus. And that is how the virus enters a cell and causes its damage. It enters its cell with a spike protein attaching to a cell membrane, and it enters the cell that way, and that's where that RNA starts to replicate, producing more virus using the human cell machinery, and then that goes out and wreaks havoc on the host. And of course, there's a variety of responses among humans, which is why some humans have very vigorous immune responses, which may make them sick, and others may not have as vigorous an immune response or may not react to the virus as much as somebody else might. So there is variety in response. So how do vaccines work? I'm not sure I need to tell all of you, because I think many of you already know, but we'll go through this anyway. So for viruses that you've seen before, measles, flu, chickenpox, perhaps polio that you've gotten a vaccine before, you already have existing antibodies. So if this virus comes into your body, the antibodies and also T cells, a different kind of immune cell, will immediately recognize it and will kill that virus and prevent it from doing damage. The problem with the coronavirus, it's that green virus down on the lower right. It was new. Had never been seen in humans before, so there was no antibody. And so there was really no immunity to the virus that was built in. When you have immunity, when you have the first response, you generate an antibody and a T cell response. And that will last for some weeks. When you get a second booster shot, that will booster the immune response. And you can get immunity that can last months or even years afterwards. And certainly if you see the virus, that will also trigger the immune response and will give you long-lasting immunity, or what we call memory. So it's not clear yet how long the memory for the coronavirus vaccine will last, but we'll know that as time goes by. There are different types of viruses, and on the margins, I put some of the companies that are working on specifically on the coronavirus and these different types of viruses. So on the left are the classical types of virus. The first one is the examples of polio virus. It's a whole virus. It's the whole polio virus that's been inactivated, and it's injected for the vaccine. The second one down is where you actually give live virus, but it's attenuated in a way that it won't cause as much damage, but has the potential to make people sick. One of the examples is just taking proteins from the virus and I'm putting and vaccinating with those proteins, and that's something that the Novavax company is working on. And by the way, the two companies up on top, Sinopharm and Sinovac, those are companies in China, and this is the virus, the whole inactivated virus that they're working and using in China currently. On the right, we see the new generations of viruses. We're going to talk about the mRNA virus, which is the Pfizer and Moderna, the two viruses that are available in this country, and the two that are up and coming are what's called viral vector viruses, and that will be Johnson & Johnson and AstraZeneca, two viruses that we expect to be approved very soon. The other two examples of the DNA and antigen presenting cells, there are no known viruses that have been approved that use those techniques. So what's been remarkable about the generation of the coronavirus is how fast it's taken. When you go back and look through history at viruses, The orange dots represent when a specific pathogen or a virus was linked to a disease. And then the blue dot is the year in which the virus was licensed. And you can see in some cases, like typhoid fever, that could be 100 years. Before coronavirus, the fastest a vaccine was ever developed was about 4 years. And that was that mumps virus, the second phase of the mumps virus, because the first phase failed. So that new vaccine development on the mumps virus was approximately 4 years. You can see on the bottom for the SARS-CoV-2 or the COVID-19 virus, that timeline has been less than a year. So why has it taken so long in the past, and what's different now? And is that safe? Because I think that's a big question that the public has, that it was approved too quickly and there's worry that it's not safe. Well, it is safe. And the only thing that was changed, instead of doing things sequentially, the virus approval process went through steps that were stacked and happened simultaneously. And that rapidly accelerated the time to approval. So up on top, you see what it used to take to approve a virus. 2 to 4 years of research, 1 to 2 years of testing it in animals, then going through the different phases, one after another in humans, and determining if it works. And then, of course, getting the approval, and then making the virus and distributing the virus through the companies. This could be a 10 to 15 year timeline up on top. On the bottom, the research, especially with an mRNA virus and our current ability to sequence genes, happened very fast, very short preclinical time, testing on humans much earlier through the various phases. While this was all going on, the companies manufacturing the virus and getting it ready to distribute, and then distributing the virus. In the timeline for Pfizer and Moderna, this took less than a year. My understanding from Moderna is they had the sequence for the mRNA within days of the genetic sequence of the virus being published out of China. So what you see on the left is the Pfizer vaccine timeline, March, and it was approved really in December and ready to go. And on the right, you see the Moderna vaccine timeline, which got going in January of last year. You can see January 11th, China shared the genetic sequence. And by 2 days later, Moderna finished the sequence for the vaccine. And within a month, the first clinical batch of vaccine was ready. And both of these came up for approval at about the same time. An absolute remarkable feat of getting these viruses to market in a short time period. These are some of the other viruses that are up and coming. We talked about the Johnson & Johnson, AstraZeneca, Novavax, and the one on the bottom, the Sanofi virus. That failed in clinical trials. It did not offer enough protection. I think they've gone back to the drawing board. I don't have a lot of details about that, but that one right now is off the table. But the other 5 viruses, these are the viruses that we anticipate will be approved in the United States. Some of the issues with the Pfizer and Moderna virus is that they need to be stored in a frozen state. And for the Pfizer virus, it needs to be stored at minus 70 degrees. And that's a capability that not all hospitals or healthcare systems have, which does limit its available to distribute it, particularly into rural areas. And if you take it out of the frozen, it decays very quickly and is no longer useful. So how does the mRNA virus work? Well, the vaccine is, as we talked about, is based on the COVID-19 genetic code or the RNA. And what RNA does, it makes protein. So you get the injection in your arm. When it enters your arm, your white blood cells or some of your immune cells recognize that something foreign has come in, and they go to attack it. And that vaccine enters the white blood cell. The white blood cell then uses its internal machinery to produce the protein, the spike protein, and it displays it on its surface. Once the white blood cell displays on its surface, it travels to the lymph nodes, perhaps in your armpit, and that's where other cells recognize it as foreign and they start to attack it. But of course, it's harmless because all it is a portion of that protein. It's not the whole virus. So your body produces antibodies and it produces T cells, and they just kind of hang out. They don't do much. And that RNA, by the way, degrades. It goes away. It has a natural degradation process. So when you get the booster shot, those antibodies and T cells are reactivated. And as we talked about before, that is what gives you the lasting immunity. How long it lasts is we still have yet to determine that, but that will be studied as time goes by. So it's actually a fairly, at least in my mind, having been trained as an immunologist, it's a fairly straightforward process. And I hope I've explained it in a way that makes sense to you. So Pfizer versus Moderna.
Now, I'm going to go ahead and stop things here. Hopefully that was enough of that video. I think he talks a little bit longer than takes questions. Anything else for the good of Rotary?
Mike, could you email out that video and just so
Sure.
we have the?
Yep.
I'd like to watch the remainder of that. So.
Yep, I will send that out. Yeah, that's my notes. If not, let's. The four-way test of the things we think, say, or do. First.
Is it the truth?
Is it the truth?
Second.
Is it fair?
Is it fair to all concerned?
Third.
Will it build
Build better goodwill and better friendships.
Fourth.
be
Will
beneficial
it
to
Be
all?
beneficial to
all
all
concerned.
concerned.
And fifth. Will
It's
it
fun.
be
Is it fun?
Thanks, guys. I will email that video out later today or tomorrow morning, along with the visioning info again and the sign up link to sign up correctly with Mike and his crew. Hope you guys have a great day.
You
We'll see you
too.
later.
Cool. Thanks,
Good
everyone.
to see you.